We'll begin with a short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang tsoki chognam la jangchu bandu lagni kyamsu chi dagi jinsu jipe sona ki drola panche sangye drupal shu.
Lama jeno, lama jeno, rinjen tsawe, lama jeno, bade, lama kusho, wanso, tabo, kache, yunje, zonyen, dobe, zaman, zaman, tujino, danyo, jesem. Kare, ndara, zemba, dami, dorje, chewa, gobo, chewa, bawa, jeno, jinchon, jemo, jeno, sowa, dozo, tujen, soye, sinje, lapshe, udam, nanye, tata, sui. Tenye, lenta, dewa, soje. Lama, nanye, be, sinje, doje, lo, chusun, dobra, sinje, labda, chulamda, dobra, sinje, la. Longchenpa sawa sinje labda zon chun na yi shi zun chawara sinje labda. Sa sa cha chenpo choke ngu tawara sinje labda so. Chewa gundu yanda lama dan chami chu je bala long je je sada lam je yun de labda. Do je change kumbha nyo do sho san jo sinje rumba je ma je wanam je 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 wa nyamba mi. Kone konda pe war sho. Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon or good evening to you. So now we're in the verses 10th, I believe so. Yeah, right. The 10th it says in Tibetan. Nime teder mugu koranamla ka chun la so pen simi ye men jang tela dine nimo jewe ju shoramawa kuwi ningdam yins.
Pointing out faults to a short-tempered retinue in these degenerate times, even with the wish to benefit, gives rise to negative states of mind. To speak peacefully is my hard advice.
Okay, I think it's well, so let me say a few words first. Well, it's very very clear, you know. Oh, but it's not so easy to practice that way sometimes, you know. Oh, but it is true. Uh, Longchenpa saying is always speaking kind of peaceful. And just peaceful is not enough sometimes, you know, really. The peaceful itself is important, there is no doubt. As a teacher, like for example, for myself, it's very important. But at the same time, it's peaceful with the kind of the truth as possible, you know. Or sometimes the peaceful can be sometimes different. It does not mean that it is truthful there either, you know. Or so therefore, it is important to. Yes, it is important to speak in peaceful. There is no doubt. Always be practiced, you know, as uh, myself. But it sometimes, due to as a human being, sometimes happens in certain words, you know. But that's not the really right one. But it's uh, yeah. Even though as a teaching, kind of also has a lots of. For example, it's a lots of understanding of like a spiritual dharma too. It has a lot of different meanings at certain time. Sometimes what happens in it, like a teacher like myself, we pick up things well, like you know, and then leave them as a don't other things that doesn't mentioning about it. anything about it. Sometimes that happens too. A lot of things. Uh, I think it's for me, it's understanding is to whatever it is according to the text and the teaching said, try to explain to the students peacefully and truthfully to detail as possible, so then student can learn their choice, or sometimes it happens, a lot of things in my, like when as a teacher, as I said, when we talk about the philosophy, different views, like things like that. We speak my own philosophy views there. Rest of just no mention about at all, you know. Oh, that's a lot of things. It's not really truthful, Truthful is the to speaking truthfully and peacefully to mention about all the different views, different beliefs, and uh, to that is also very important. For example, for another way, like when I speaking right now, I'm teaching in one group. We are teaching about the study about this words of perfect my teacher. The the it is a Lamrim. So I have a responsibility to be sharing them. That is not the only way, one way of Lamrim their text. No, there's many Lamrim texts. That is the Zapata Rinpoche basis of Lamrim about talking about the basis of the Nyingtik traditions, or basic things. But actually it's mentioned all there. But then I have to explain them also. Lamrim of the Kajuba. What is the Kajuba text? Or Jewel Ornament Liberation. What is the Gelugpa text? The Lamrims, they have three different stages of lambda, short ones, the middle ones, and the largest ones, and they have, so it's true. Or Sakyapas, this. So all this mentioned is give to more opportunity student can see, oh yeah, it happened to me one time. I was in the teaching in the long time in Arizona. In one talk I was talking about, there's one nun came. Then I mentioned about the dual ornament liberation as a lamrim. Then she says, "Oh yeah, you have a lamrim in the Kajuba." I said, you know, lamrim dual ornament liberation is, if you look at the history, the first lamrim in the Tibetan Buddhism. There's none of them is there exist at that time, you know. Before that, Atisha's lamrim about the path of the light or central longitude, part of the enlightenment. That was only available in Sanskrit language. There's no available at the time, So then Lamrim came from after there, all the Lamrims, including the Gelupas, the Sajapas, and all the bases of that, like things like that. So that's what I'm trying to say is peacefully, it's wonderful sometimes, it's important, but sometimes whatever it is, tell the truth. So it's give us good opportunity for everybody can open their mind and see things, larger perspective, not just the one way. So, okay, sorry. So talking so much. Um, yes, let's anybody else to speaking this about this topic.
Let's see, I'll just start down the line here. Richard, do you have any thoughts or questions you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's always it's always tricky or challenging following Lama because of his insights. But yeah, since we're a small group tonight, I think I mentioned last time that I had been away and missed one of our gatherings. I went to a wonderful seminar on an approach to communication that's called nonviolent communication. It was put together by a psychologist by the name of Marshall Rosenberg. And he grew up in Detroit and ended up ultimately doing a lot of peace mediation around the world, including in the Middle East. And I'm reminded here, to speak peacefully is the biggest thrust of his approach. And just two caveats among many. This was a 9-day intensive workshop that come to mind is our one is, I think, how one says something is every bit as important as the words one actually says. So the same message delivered with a gentle, peaceful tone can land very differently than if one says it with a lot of energy or excitement, particularly if it has an aversive edge to it. So I think we need to be mindful of how we speak. And for me, at times, that means taking like a mindful gap to perhaps taking a few breaths or something to allow my energy to dissipate and come back down a little bit. The second thing that's part of this framework is thinking about the feelings and the needs of all parties that are involved. So I'll speak for myself. I know sometimes, particularly if I'm reactive rather than responsive, I tend to be oriented towards what are my feelings in the moment and what are the underlying needs behind those feelings, often unmet needs. And what this approach would teach us to do is to consider, well, what is this other person feeling in this moment as well? And what might be their unmet needs that perhaps lead them to speak in a way that's not peaceful or that lands with us as pointed. And if we can remember that they're coming from a place of and I don't mean this judgmentally, but from a place of confusion or anger or whatever, and that they're suffering in that moment. Shantideva talks about this in chapter 6, the patience chapter, remembering that other people are as tossed about by conditions and causes as we are. So anyways, I enjoyed the training quite a bit. Many of us there were Buddhist practitioners and found this approach to peaceful communication to be very resonant with the Buddha's teachings on right speech. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Okay, Rich, you're next on the slides here. You have something you'd like to ask or share?
Can't hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Well, this is a topic that I really need help for, and I haven't figured out how to ask or receive the help I need. I have a stepdaughter who she's 22 now, but had a lot of trouble growing up, and probably still has problems integrating with society in a real successful manner. And in fact, she's the main reason I sought something, and ultimately how I ended up on some sort of Buddhist path. I was raised by my dad was a German immigrant, an alcoholic, violent, physically and mentally. And for better or worse, I have a very sharp tongue. And when I'm sort of forced into that responsiveness that Richard sort of just talked to, I am really good at lashing out and hurting other people's feelings. Um, I want to be a good stepfather for my daughter. Um, I see many of her challenges, and I've learned so much on this path about just being a human being, about understanding the nature of reality and how the illusion of relative reality causes such distress. And when I get to these opportunities to have deeper conversations with my daughter, she might come home any moment. So I find myself facing fear. I'm afraid to say, I think I've come to this place where I understand peaceful means. But sometimes I think, I'm not sure that's what's needed. Um, I don't know. This is such a timely thing to come up right now, and I almost started crying, but I don't know. I guess my question would be how do I develop the courage? I and it's not necessarily directly in line with this passage because I think a peaceful means is always the right direction, but how do what can I do to develop the courage to have like difficult conversations for steering, um, my family in the right direction? And I'm not necessarily looking for a specific answer, but these are the things that like immediately just came to me. So I don't know what else to say, but thank you.
Thanks, Rich. That was very vulnerable and touching to share that. I don't know if Lama, if you had any thoughts for Richard particularly, or if you want to just open it up again. The thing that you guys frozen up here?
No, I think Lama's.
Lama here.
Nothing much to say. Well,
Okay.
well, I mentioned earlier, for me is to think peaceful as we are rising. The question is what that means, right? The question is peaceful means what? Peaceful means only the word is peaceful, or peaceful means about it's the truthful, everything what we said it, whether we said in you know the nice word or nice sound, nice voice. It's that is okay for me. It's my life experiences. I'm looking about not the looking about. I'm not looking about the nice word and the nice voice. Actually, I'm looking about what the person saying is. It's a really truth it makes sense. Even though at the moment it's hard to accept it at the moment. Of course, there's a lot of things out there. Certain things are, the moment is hard to accept it. The sounds kind of a little bit, voice kind of gel different ways there, the words a little different. But there are certain times the truth is there. It matters for me, really. Big matters because of the long run. The short run, of course, anything can be possible, right? So that's what I'm thinking about. For me, the question is peaceful means what? The question is arises, you know. It is early mentioned, some of you mentioned, yes, it is a way of speaking, there's a mindful, there's a lot of things to needed mindful to where we're speaking, the audience, who is the audience, who is their feelings, and there's a lot of things there. There's no doubt. So many things have to be aware about, a lot of things. But for me, is the speaking peacefully with whatever it is, situation. The truth is, what is the meaning of the truth, whatever it is, situation. So then it depends on the individual, they accept or not accept, maybe realizing at the moment, maybe not realizing for a long time. Maybe sometimes it takes years and after years. That happens to me many in my life too. As I realize, oh yeah, now it makes sense, you know. The kind of try to understanding is for me is understanding about the truth is what? What is the truth? That's also a big question for me. What is the truth? What is the peaceful means? So that is I'm thinking about actually. It is important way of saying it, there is no doubt. It's so wonderful to be really to be trained it. It's a wonderful train, and of course we all met at different in our life, including in my school times. Long time. Of course, you all met different teachers in the whole life, and still I'm reading the teachers too, and some of them is the words are sometimes hard to accept it, really, really, very difficult. But there is a truth. There is a wonderful truth there. And sometimes the peaceful is there, but there is no essence is there, missing the essence part. So that is we have to individually has to be how to say
Discerning.
yeah, this decision or to
Discerning or
this
aware.
awareness, how much we individually how yeah, it's not easy actually, whatever it is. What is really peace for me? It's also a big question. What is the truthful means? How to, for me, it's not separable. That has to be together. Can't separate that. What I mean, my point making here is the speaking truthfully, peacefully, at the same time, truthfully there. How to speak it. So that is uh, my understanding. What the author is saying is about it's true. It always try to speak the truthful. If not, then it hurts other people. That's very clear. The one simple word he's saying is my understanding in Tibetan. He says because of the degeneration time. so so that is for me is sometimes it's no doubt it's a value of peaceful speaking. At the same time, it have to be value about the truthful speaking. So that is I don't know how to do it. What that means for us. Oh, so okay, stop talking. Okay, somebody else. We have 5 more minutes, so please.
Okay, John or Darcy, what is your thoughts?
Well, there's a saying that I like to go by. I should say what I mean what I say, but not say it mean. And I'm also, like years ago, I was always ready for a good argument. And I'm not anymore. When it starts going in that direction, I'll pause and say, well, let's continue this later on when things aren't so tense. But it makes all the difference in the world, uh, speaking that way. But,
I like that. That's a good one, John. Darcy, what's your thoughts?
The difficulty I have is determining when someone purposely says something to me that hurts me, to address it or not to address it. And most of the time I stay silent. But, holding that hurt inside and not speaking your truth, to me, creates dis-ease. So that's the dilemma that I have. Most of the time, instead of retorting or responding negatively, or I just don't respond at all. I'll walk away from a situation before I do that. But at the same time, I'm holding this intense feeling of, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it's not a good feeling. And I feel like I shouldn't hold that inside. I should say something, but how and when is difficult for me. And even if. So most of the time I let it go, and then I'm harboring this ill feeling of what just happened to me. Instead of, it says don't point out somebody's faults, even if it benefits them, even if I think it benefits them. I don't know when to draw the line.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I can relate to that, Darcy. Sometimes I wonder I think I don't forget what happens, I guess. And it's information about a person or a situation. But sometimes I don't want to say anything either, because it seems like it inflames the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. As a member of the short-tempered retinue myself, we sometimes have this, right? And I think one piece of advice I got a few years back, which I didn't really fully understand, I'm still working on it, but was that we don't always need to act about how we feel. This idea that we feel a certain way, we need to do something about it. And I'm just speaking generally now. I'm noticing as we're sitting in this retreat, we're about 2 months in, we have 2 more months to go. And just sitting and doing nothing for, a long time and taking in these wonderful blessings. It's interesting to watch the mind shift a little bit. And my mind, not nearly as much as many, I'm sure. However, the thing that's really wonderful is that getting some space between this need to act, just sitting in one place, not necessarily doing anything for 8 hours a day, takes out that sense of having to do something about this or that, and gives a lot of space with like different things that have come up over the course of life. And and that's a really powerful thing. So I guess it just comes back to that basic instruction that Lama's always giving and others are around practicing mindfulness and just being with. It's quite powerful, I'm noticing. Yeah, thanks.
So you guys, Katie, you and Lama have to go to the teachings now. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We appreciate the time, and I don't know if everyone else would like to discuss the topic more. I'm willing to stay on till the end of the hour if people want to. I think a lot of good questions and stuff came up, and really heartfelt sharing. I almost want to ask Richard about a little to elaborate on the nonviolent communication, but I don't know if that's something he's wants to get into. But I know you guys have to go, so we should probably dedicate.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, take care. Yeah. See you next week. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lama. Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Tim, I would be willing to share a little more, but I want to make sure others have a chance to speak too. I think everyone's. Have you haven't shared yet, Tim?
Yeah, well, I guess what came a couple things. Each of your guys' shares were very heartfelt and interesting, and the theme that kind of came up for me, on the personal level, like Rich mentioned with his daughter, stepdaughter, and like family, retinue is kind of has that family. I think in the monastic or in the religious sense, your retinue, the people you're really close to, their faults, they know yours, and I thought of some things where my family will often have the same gripes and gossips about each other's faults, and sometimes I get really tired of hearing it from second parties, or even saying it, and I think to myself, I really want to talk to that other family member and just go, hey, I'm really tired of hearing from some of the other family members about this issue. Isn't there something we could actually do about it? Or, like it makes me want to be a little more direct and maybe confronting. And then other times I feel the opposite. I feel like, well, they're not going to change. People aren't necessarily going to change just because they know they have this fault, or it is something that, is upsetting or frustrating to someone else in the family. And I thought of that. I don't know if it's an actual sutra or what, but I thought of the metaphor of like the surgeon or the doctor, analogy of, in a sense, how do you operate or intervene to help heal? Because I think ultimately what we're talking about is, this sort of palliative, healing our minds, taming our minds, our emotions. And in a way, it's almost like I was wondering, Richard, like, is the nonviolent communication, is it like a slightly better bedside manner kind of approach, almost like instead of, like you're saying, Rich, instead of your dad just being like ripping you a new one because he's lit and he's had some drinks and he doesn't really give a crap to the consequences, maybe of, his, as we can all feel sometimes, or is it something where you go, if I really sat down with this, family member or friend, or even just my own self-talk with a better bedside manner, and just said, the whole point of communicating is ideally to be empathetic and to understand each other and to help each other. And if I'm not doing that, how can I learn, or how can I help others by example, or maybe even, like you say, going to a seminar, discussing it with, as we're doing here, in a sense, kind of going, do these enlightened beings or more skillful psychologists, oh wait, Peter's here. Hang on. So I was curious. I've heard a little bit about nonviolent communication, and I thought, just the way it's stated. Hi, Peter. We're in our second half of the call. Lama is going to the teachings, but we're just having follow-up discussion on stanza number 10 and the topic of nonviolent communication. Just that word, the idea that communication could be violent, in a way, it almost, like I say, it sort of, or even just manipulative, or, advertising. We get bombarded with so many messages that are, like Lama was talking a little bit, I think, to this point of, it might be peacefully presented or nicely presented, but it's not really very honest. It's not truthful. And if someone's just saying, yeah, this is a great car, you're going to love it, you should buy it, and you just think, I'd rather have someone, be honest and be like, this car is going to have a lot of issues because it's over, 100,000 miles, and most of these cars start breaking down then, or, I don't know, whatever. So I almost wonder, Richard, if you're comfortable just saying a few more things, it might be an interesting segue in terms of, how we apply, because I think there must be certainly some, if I recall, there were some suggestions for how to go about not just pointing out that communication is not always peaceful, but maybe how to actually do it. So I don't know if you're willing to share a little bit more, if everyone's open to that.
Sure. So, the risk of just throwing out a few caveats is it might come across as a bit disjointed, but so just sort of a footnote here. I love what John said. I've never heard that phrase like that before. What was it? Say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. Yeah. So there is a book, John, you might even be aware of it, by Oren J. Sofer, who is and that's the title of his book, Say What You Mean What You Say. And what he's done, he is a Dharma teacher in the Theravadan insight meditation tradition. And he became a trainer in this nonviolent communication. And essentially what he did was he's married the two, because as I said, it really is very resonant with what we would call right speech. So his work is what actually got me interested in it. And he was somebody who said to this founder, Marshall Rosenberg, I think bringing some Dharma into this would really help to extend it. And apparently there are several people in the country with Buddhist backgrounds that have done this. But so to me, what I said about considering what are the feelings, and then underneath the feelings, this is a level I often don't get to, what might be the unmet need? And not just for myself, but for both parties, would be a really, really critical caveat. So, like underlying anger, there might be deep hurt. So maybe a need to feel safe or a need to feel respected or whatever. And a lot of what they would do in the training and in some of the books on this, which include, as I said, hybrids with the Dharma, is you learn the language of feelings and needs, which parenthetically, I work with kids, and recently was at a conference, and I had 2 middle school teachers say to me, I'm literally working with kids nowadays that don't have a language of emotions beyond maybe mad, sad, and angry. So like building that language of feelings and needs is something they would put a lot of emphasis on in this approach, so that in real time you could start to identify them, or using provisional language, check in. Like I might say, Tim, I noticed blah, blah, blah. Are you feeling that based on what I said, maybe disrespected or whatever? So it allows us to clarify. And the provisional language is you just never want to put words in somebody else's mouth. But if you frame it as a hypothesis, I'm wondering if, for example, people might be more receptive to sharing those feelings and unmet needs. A huge one, I think of my own daughter with this and the teenage years, is listening. Starting with active listening. And I know so often in everyday conversation, we're already formulating what we want to say. And it ends up diluting our attention and our ability to do what Thich Nhat Hanh would call deep listening. So just listening without an agenda and allowing somebody to feel heard. And I know, again, I love the point you made, Tim, about retinue would be kind of like the sangha equivalent of family. And just to put out there, I really do care about you, and it's important to me to understand how you're feeling and what your needs are. Could we talk about this? Another caveat would be knowing when it's not skillful to talk about this. So again, framing it as a question. Are you okay processing this now, or would you rather maybe come back to it after you've had a little time to whatever? Basically to get grounded and settle again. And of course, many of our non-Buddhist friends don't have the skills we would have to sort of anchor ourselves in the body or on the breath. So just knowing when to have those conversations is also important. Another one we did a lot of exercises on is often if something is kind of fraught and there's potential for conflict, we might open with what comes across as subtle blame or criticism. And I know when we were doing these exercises, my partners were telling me, no, that's landing as blame, even when I didn't mean it to be. So instead of like, you didn't bother to put the dishes away, kind of a trivial example, but maybe just starting with an observation, just objective fact, like, when the dishes are left unwashed on the counter, okay, subtle change, but it's less likely to evoke some sense of defensiveness. And then following up the observation with, admittedly, this could sound scripted. This is why I went to this conference, and you end up practicing this for hours at a time, but it might be, I feel. So instead of making it about you, we keep the focus on I language. So I feel blah, 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 because I have a need for, like an orderly environment or whatever. So avoiding I statements, avoiding tag words, which are those little words that have subtle digs in them. And yeah, I mean, again, there's other caveats that are out there, but I think a big one is really just pulling back and being willing to listen, and to explore those feelings and needs that often don't get talked about. One final caveat that comes to mind is kind of all coming back to me now is, and I think I hate to bring in gender, but men are more likely to do this. I remember when my wife and I were first married, she looked at me very earnestly and said, "You know, Richard, sometimes I just need you to listen and not go into problem solving," which I'm often very apt to do. I see Tim shaking his head. You know,
Getting it, yeah.
absolutely. But just, maybe checking in, would it be helpful for us to maybe do a little problem solving? And if not, at least open up the space for a person to say, "No, right now, I just need you to listen empathically," or whatever. So, but often what happens is we're so quick to go to fixing things that we overlook that language of feelings and needs. And often just giving a chance to articulate those will lead you to the solutions, but without it feeling so goal oriented. So, anyways, Tim, thanks for inviting me to share. It was a great conference. I love Oren Sofer's book. If any of you want to maybe pick it up. Another one is Marsha Rosenberg's book on, it's called Nonviolent Communication. Lots of wonderful ideas in there.
Thanks, Richard. That was really well done, and I'm happy to see if anyone else wants to follow up on that. I know Rich had expressed a lot of emotion, and maybe has had a chance to think about some of the things that might be present for him from what he shared earlier. And if not, Peter, you can chime in maybe after Rich gets a follow-up if he wants it.
Thanks, Tim, and yeah, thank you, Richard. I've taken some notes here, for sure. I've talked about my life several times, and one good thing I continually get back is I think I'm doing pretty good. Like I'm doing like a lot of the right things, and it's just kind of a hard situation. Could be a lot worse, it could be better, but I think some of the things you shared are really really helpful, and really probably broadly it's just like helpful to hear. Yeah, I mean there is a way through it, right? Because sometimes it just feels like there's no good solution here, but just to hear some of these ideas and like thinking about, yeah, that probably would work, is super helpful. By one thing I come back to, and probably the reason I even mentioned my dad is like, it's a silly example, but my wife tries to keep these little caps on our toothbrushes so that they stay clean, and she's asked me to do it many, many times, and then one day she's like pissed off and she asks me, right, and then tells me to do it. Well, you know what, which time worked that I actually finally remembered, and I'm doing it all the time. And that's the kind of thing I struggle with, is like sometimes, I mean, I agree that honesty is always the right way to go, even though some people don't always want to hear honesty. And I think that was a hard lesson for me to learn a long time ago. But, sometimes a little bit of a sting or a little bit of a bite in the tongue can be a great lesson. but I think it requires a lot of prep and a lot of these other tools. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, Richard, I might reach out for some of these. You said Rosenberg was and then,
Yeah, Marshall Rosenberg.
okay,
Every Barnes and Noble carries it. It's a classic. It's called Nonviolent Communication.
okay,
Paperback, relatively inexpensive. And then the other one is Oren J Jay Sofer. And he's the Buddhist teacher that married the NVC with Buddhist teachings. And he has a great website. I would consider checking it out. I took his 8-week training too. It was amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just share, with a sense of compassion, part of what nudged me towards these explorations was my daughter's 25 now. But the teenage years were kind of rocky. And I remember her once laying into me and it was incredibly hurtful. But, about hypocrisy and this and that. And so anyways, I remember feeling so defeated. Like, my God, I've blown my relationship with her. But she's 25 now. And I'll just share with you, again, to end this on an optimistic note. About a year ago, she said to me, it's humbling to say this, but she said, Dad, you're not as angry as you used to be. So I thought, well, I must be doing something right. She's noticed. And our relationship is better. So, yeah. So.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
There's always hope, right?
Yeah.
Old dogs can learn new communication.
Referring to the nonviolent communications, I have the audio book, and anybody that's interested in it, I'd be more than happy to send them the file. I've listened to it several times. So anybody that's interested in it, like to listen to an audio book, I'd be more than happy to send it.
Cool. Well, I think Rich might take you up on that.
Yeah, I'd like to see if it's like on Spotify or something, and I could listen to it too. That's what I was going to check out my resources, but yeah, if not, I'll definitely hit you up, John. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give you my phone number and you can text me.
Okay.
My phone number is 813-545-7019.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we got a couple minutes left. Peter, did you want to chime in or share anything before we kind of wrap up?
Well, let's see. I'm sorry I had to have been late. I was coming back from Phoenix, and I got off the freeway right at 5:30, but I didn't think it was a great idea to get on Zoom during rush hour traffic. But I was at the Mayo Clinic to get my every 6-month checkup, so I'm still cancer free or in remission or however. So that's good news for my day. Spent a whole day, had to go all the way there from Tucson to do it, but so I'm grateful for that. And I'm sorry I missed Lama and the rest of everybody's share. It's just I enjoyed listening to what y'all had to say. I struggle with I have a partner who's deeply into addiction and trying, balancing out. Oh, I'm so worried about them, but actually, it's me that's the one. They can suffer all they want, but I'm the one that's suffering. And should I say anything? Is that being self-centered? And go through that whole, I don't know how many other people here have had to deal with, addicts that they love. But so this is good advice. And yeah, I could probably use that book myself. I see a therapist, and she's for years now. Actually, this has been going on, and they say, you know, it's okay to think about yourself sometimes. And first thing we got to do is take care of ourselves, so we can take care of somebody else or help somebody else, not necessarily take care of them or that way of what was it? So it was to speak pleasantly. um, Yeah, I have a hard time because if I don't say anything, I notice the next one is don't talk or something like that. So I don't talk, and it builds up, and then when it finally comes out, it's pretty. My feeling is it gets to be not pretty. I don't know if it's violent, but maybe. I didn't think of it that way. There's so many. Um, Nuances in that. So anyway, I appreciate being here. I came in late because I really appreciate this group and what Lama's done for us. And so I wanted to be here as much as I can. So thank you so much.
Well, it's good to have this core group, and I really appreciate everyone's authenticity and sharing and learning, and even with Lama only being able to give us a shorter session, I think it's also opened up a chance for us to dialogue a little bit more as well. So thanks for showing up. I don't have I'm on my wife's computer, so I don't have the dedication prayers to post on the screen, but if we'll just dedicate silently for a moment and send whatever merit we've generated from this discussion for the end of suffering for all beings, including ourselves, and hope to see you all next week.
Thanks for hosting, Tim.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we'll see you next time.